You ready?
We're good. Yep, think so.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone to this special CTE committee meeting. What we're going to discuss today is, as many of you know, we part of one of the many tasks that our committee has been given is to develop a plan for expert review teams to really support LEAs in the implementation of particularly the CTE work within the blueprint. And so John and team have been working really tirelessly to get feedback from all kinds of stakeholders, from LEAs, from folks on the ground, to develop a really thoughtful implementation plan for our expert review teams. And so that's what we're here today to talk about, is to have John walk us through what the proposed plan is moving forward. So this is a really important part of our work, I think, because I mean, the entire blueprint, this is something completely new, right? And certainly what we're focused on in terms of career and technical education across the state, where we're introducing a lot of new concepts and new ideas here. And it's really important that we work in partnership with LEAs and that we are putting the support structures in place to help them realize what is possible here with the implementation of the blueprint. So I'm really excited for today's meeting. And before we get into the meat of it, I'd like to start by introducing our newest member. It is my pleasure to welcome Robert Limpert. Mr. Limpert is the Director of Workforce Development at Harford Community College and the prior CTE Director for Harford County Public Schools. So you really bring great expertise, Rob, to this committee. We're so happy to have you, and I'd love to just turn it over to you to introduce yourself and offer any comments you might have.
Sure. Thanks, Myra. I'm very excited to be here. As you stated, I'm currently with Harford Community College, and prior to that was the CTE Director of Harford County Public Schools. During the time I was there, we grew from around 1,700 students to almost 8,000 in the 10 years that I was in charge of CTE. Saw tremendous growth in our IRCs, and even our programs grew tremendously. So CTE has been a part of me forever, even from my time in high school through my college experience. I was a CTE teacher starting before I got into the administration pathway. And I share a story that the CTE director in Harford County Public Schools at the time was named Bill Securo, and this is 32 years ago. He interviewed me in his office, and at the time he was sitting there and he said, "Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Being bold, brazen, and young, I looked at him and said, "Sitting in that seat right there." It took me 12 years to get into that seat, but I did it. And, CTE and career and technology education has been me from middle school all the way to my first career ending, and now second stint in CTE, but at the post-secondary side. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to provide my expertise and provide feedback and really help advise this committee moving forward. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm super excited to be here today.
Thank you so much, Rob. I'm glad to have you. Okay, before we get started, I'll just ask Molly, you want to do roll call, confirm that we have a quorum to move forward?
Absolutely. So present, we have yourself, Chair Norton, Sharnetta Young, Dr. Wright, Dr. Boyd, Secretary Anderson, Matt Holloway, and Rob Limpert. And I know Secretary Wu will be joining us just a few minutes late, as she has speaking engagement until 2 o'clock. So we do have a quorum present.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so as always, let's just ground ourselves in the big picture of what we're doing here. The blueprint for Maryland's future, we kind of outlines these 5 major goals. And our work is really focused in goal 4, looking at post-CCR pathways and increasing the percentage of high school graduates that complete apprenticeships and or achieve other industry recognized credentials, right? And so a big piece of our ability to achieve that goal is the ways in which we support LEAs as they develop their CTE plans. And so part of what we're about to discuss is this model that puts expert review teams on the ground to really, again, be a support system for LEAs as they start to really understand how their own CTE programs need to evolve, what kind of barriers do they face in that evolution, and how can we help to remove those barriers? What are the things that we need to be contemplating from a practice perspective, from a policy perspective, et cetera. This work has been ongoing for the last year, and I really want to give a lot of credit to John and also to Jackie from the National Center for Education and the Economy, along with, several partners who have really, really done the hard work of figuring out, how do we put together an expert review team plan and protocol that serves the LEAs and our students and other stakeholders in the best way as we start to implement some of these changes that are coming down the pike. So I also just want to say, listen, this is we're in the world of startups where I come from, we call this MVP, or as I like to call it, so the industry term is MVP, minimum viable product. In my companies, we like to call them MLPs, minimum lovable products, because I don't want it to just be viable. I want it to be lovable. And that's what I think we're trying to build here. We're going to learn by implementing, and we're going to make changes. And so this is very much going to be a collaborative, iterative process, as all, I think, transformative change is. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to John and Jackie and let them lead us through what we're proposing here.
Thank you, Myra. That was perfect introduction. I appreciate that. Just like Myra said, I think this is this work is super important, especially these ERTs and getting us on the ground and getting us going as far as the CTE work and moving it forward and getting out the support that we need to from our end. So this is exciting. I think it's a lot of fun. This is a fun process to just get into schools and into LEAs and just to see what's happening. So I'm John Strickland. I'm the Expert Review Team Manager for the CTE Committee. I started this job last July. I've been working through this Expert Review Team plan and program since then, and I've learned a lot from this job. I've gained a lot of knowledge from different people, whether it's Myra or Molly or Rachel or Jackie or Rob or Joe or Adam or whatever. So it's been a learning process, and I've enjoyed it. So I'm excited for you guys to look through and hear what we have to say today. A couple weeks ago, you did receive the deployment plan in your email. So hopefully you've looked through that a little bit. So that'll give you some sort of like insight as to what we're going to be talking about today. But we're just going to give kind of an overview of the ERT program, where it was, where it is, and where it's going. Just a little bit of that today. So we appreciate being here. So the other person you're going to hear other than me that Myra mentioned was Jackie Kramer. She's the Director of Policy Analysis and Development at NCEE. She has been part of this process with me too, and with our team since last July, as well as a colleague of hers, Charlotte Notaris, who right now is probably hiking through the Grand Canyon. Sounds like it's probably like 190 degrees there. So hopefully she's okay. She said she has water, so we're good, but she would be here if not, if she wasn't there. So with that being said, we'll get started on this. So basically the expert review teams for the CTE committee were created through the blueprint. So it was created by the blueprint in that the CTE committee is tasked with creating an expert review team program. that just like any other high-performing system around the world, they use these expert review teams to get more understanding and more context around what's going on, and then that way, ultimately, it can inform policy. So, what our goal here is, as the CTE Committee Expert Review Team, is to monitor progress across the state and schools. Is there a creation of a robust CTE system? What does that look like? Is there implementation going on? Has it been implemented? And what does that look like? But then also, what is the progress towards that 45% goal of graduates graduating with a high school level registered apprenticeship or with an industry recognized credential? So that's what we're really looking at as far as expert review teams on our end, is where is that progress and where are we when it comes to that? So we do have other roles in this, not just to do that, not just to look at that progress, but we also are here to provide recommendations to schools and to LEAs, the local education agencies, based on our visits as a team. Recommend to them like what we're seeing, and prioritizing those schools and LEAs that are not making the adequate progress towards those goals. We also need to report back to ourselves. This is a big piece of it, I think, because there's progress that schools and LEAs can't make without our help. And we can't just keep putting things on LEAs and on schools to fix. We have to be part of the plan too. So we're also going to be making recommendations on how we can partner and how we can better support those schools that aren't making that adequate progress. I will say that adequate is not in quotation marks, but it should be here, probably because we need to define what does adequate progress look like. And that's something that we're working through right now, is what is adequate? What does that progress look like, and how can we help people and help LEAs to get there? Another part of what we're supposed to be doing as the CTE committee is advising the AIB. If the LEAs and schools are not prioritizing those goals in their CTE planning. If they're going rogue, which probably is not going to happen, but let's say it does, that's our job too, is to let the AIB know that, hey, listen, we're supposed to be working on that 45% goal, and this LEA, they're not doing it. They said, we don't care. That's something that we just need to make sure the AIB knows, so we can report that back to them. We're not seeing that to be something that's going to happen very often, but that's part of our task. What you'll see here is this is our funding. This graphic needs to be seen too, because this program and this ERT system was started in school year 21-22 all the way up to now, and it has not had any funding yet. So we just did a pilot year during this school year, and none of this had funding. So we're excited that there is some limited funding that is coming up for this coming up school year, and this is good stuff. However, in order to keep this sustained, and we need a more substantial funding source so we can keep this work going in full effect in the future. But right now, we do have some limited funding for next year, and we're trying to figure out now how those funds are going to be allocated. We do have some staffing pieces that we can put in, but we're trying to iron that out right now about what does that look like and how is staffing structured to make sure that what we're doing and the work we're doing is getting out to the LEAs, and we're supporting them in their CTE journeys. So that being said, our strategy from the CTE committee side is we've decided that it is efficient, and also thinking about the limited budget that we have, we're going to get started organizing our CTE strategy around the LEA specifically. So what we notice is that as far as CTE goes, that's more of an LEA thing. It's planned at the LEA level and at the district level. It's thought through around the LEA level, and then it trickles down into the schools. And so what better way to figure out the state of CTE in the state of Maryland than to go out to LEAs and just see what they're doing. What is their strategy? What are they doing in their county and in their district that they are trying to move forward and to try to make this progress towards those goals? So we think that starting there and getting a baseline is really where this all happens. And so Our plan is for the next 2 years, starting this school year, we're going to get a baseline and go to all 24 LEAs. We're going to reach all of them in the first 2 years to try to figure out how we can eventually shift that focus into these revisits. And now that we have an idea of what our districts are working on and working through, and the strengths and recommendations and some challenges that they're going through, how can we then take all that together and then start planning a focus on schools specifically, programs specifically, and things like that. So that's what we think that this can do. It also is going to give us time as CTE committee to start finalizing that state guidance and the definitions to start assessing that progress and where they are in all of that. So far in the LE and the CTERT timeline, we are doing pilot year activities. We've been doing those since last July. That's when I came on and we started playing around with this idea of, what are we going to do now that we have to do expert review teams? What are they going to look like? How are we going to get out there? Who's going to be there? How's it going to be set up? So we decided that we were going to propose a program design, and this is what the design is. We're going to do LEAs. We're going to focus on them. We're going to focus on where they are and get a baseline of that. I started in July and August. I reached out to a lot of the CTE directors and CTE staff around the state just to introduce myself, to see kind of who I was, what we were doing, what our goals might be, but also just to make a connection, because I think that part of the process that I find important is connecting with people. One of my core values, when I did some core value mining for myself, was connection. And I think that piece of it is part of this process, and part of the planning is try to just get to know people so they know we're not there just to go in and check some boxes and then tell them what they didn't do. We're there to support them and to do what we can to try to make sure that at the end of the day, our kids get what they need at graduation and beyond. I also started in September, started going out. I probably visited half of our LEAs in person, just to do that same connecting, but also to get out and see what we're working with. I live on the Eastern Shore. We do go over to Annapolis sometimes to watch a movie in a bigger theater at the mall. We might go to the mall, and sometimes we go to IKEA. And so that's what we do over there. And so we now being able to me personally go out and go see what's happening in Calvert, what's happening in Frederick, what's happening down in Wycomico, things like that. It's given me a chance to kind of to help this planning process along. We've developed the tools and the templates to go forward to try to ask the right questions to the right people, and try to see what's going to look like when we go into classrooms, when we go into schools, and things like that. We also gather data and background information from LEAs, from districts, from counties, from schools, just to try to get an idea of where we were going to be headed from here. Then we did pilot visits. These were really good. I enjoyed it myself. I found it to be super informative as a school person myself, just to get out to other schools and see what's happening out there. Is just that's where a lot of my learning happened. So we identified some pilot LEAs. Praise be that we had two that were super excited to welcome us in. And we'll talk about that in a couple minutes, but we had pilot LEAs that said yes first thing. None of them that I asked said no, we're good. We identified some pilot teams, so teams of people that went with us to go on those visits. Those teams were there to sit with us and do focus groups and classroom visits, to be part of this, but also help us figure out what worked and what didn't work. We trained the team, so we did some orientations about the tools that we built, the tools that we made, and to go through the agendas of the day and what they were going to look like, but also what were their expectations and what were they going into it wanting to do. We did the two visits. We did one in March and one in May. We went to Queen Anne's County and we went to Anne Arundel County. We refined the tools from the first visit to the second, and now we refine the tools from the second visit, and that's what you see in your deployment plan. We developed the LEA reports. We are finishing up the Queen Anne's one right now. It is in the hands of the team members that went to Queen Anne's that day. And we wanted to get that part right. It's not going to take this long in the future, but we wanted to get it right. And we wanted the reports and the summaries to go to the districts and to the LEAs to be usable and to be actionable and to have things in there that can work for them. And then we have the deployment plan that we sent out a couple weeks ago, and that's where we are right now on that. So for our pilot visits in March and May, we had two goals: to understand the CTE system in that LEA. And so what were their plans for expanding and updating programs, creating new ones? What are their challenges right now? And then what are they doing well, and some best practices that we can share with other LEAs. But then also, here's the visit structure, here's the team structure, here's the tools. How are they? Did they work? And that was a lot of our debrief talk afterwards, were, you know, we went and the classroom visits were too long. The focus groups are not long enough. We need more people here, less people there. So there was a lot of that adapting, which is going to continue on, like Myra said, throughout the course of this program. So we did the two visits. Those are the LEAs we visited. We did a full day in each LEA. We visited two schools. Queen Anne's has two comprehensive high schools and no CTE centers, so we went both of their schools. And then in Anne Arundel, they have two CTE centers, so we went to one of them and a comprehensive high school and did that. So we did focus groups. On the right-hand side, you'll see the people that were in those focus groups. The most informative part of it being here was just listening to what they had to say. We think that seeing those staff people and those students and listening to what they had to say is what's gonna really steer the ship, because I think that they want to be heard and their voices need to be in the room at all times. These are pilot visit team members. These are just some of the ones that went with us. Some went on both, some went on one, but these are the types of people that were on those teams. And the blueprint does tell us who is going to be on those teams, and you'll see that later, and you'll see that in your deployment plan. But during the pilot process, these are the people that made it on those visits. So what I'm going to do now is I've invited 3 people to just kind of give an idea of what they've seen during the pilot process. We have Joe Rose, who was I think technically, I guess, and he can correct me, he's the current principal at CAT North, which is a Center of Applied Technologies North in Anne Arundel currently. But as of like next week, he's going to be the Director of Workforce Development in Anne Arundel. So he's got a new job. He's in transitioning between his offices, I think is what he said. But anyway, that's who's here to speak about us visiting CAT North that day. Sharnetta is one of your fellow committee members. She went with us to Anne Arundel also. And then Adam Tolley, who is the CT director in Queen Anne's. And he helped me plan that first visit that we did with them. And I just asked him to just like give us, you know, some highlights and maybe some thoughts on the process for them. Just a couple minutes, just so you guys can hear what they have to say. So I think they can just unmute themselves. I hope they can. So we'll just start with Joe, if that's all right, if you want to go first.
I would love to. Thanks, Sean. Thank you all for being here and in the invitation. What a really cool process, and I'm really honored to be part of it. So during the visit, I was, as John said, I was the principal at the Center of Applied Technology North. And Rob, I love your story. It is very similar to mine. CTE is my world. I've been the principal of 2 CAT centers. I was a carpenter. I was in culinary before I came in to education. So I absolutely love CT, and it blends my lives. It's pretty awesome. So thanks for sharing that earlier, Rob. I appreciate it. So I really, really enjoyed the review committee's visit. I think a lot of time as a school principal or as an assistant principal or even as a teacher, people come in and visit, but we don't receive a lot of feedback from that visit, and we don't really feel part of the visit. It's more of somebody's coming in and checking a box. And this did not feel that way at all. It was very organized. Our students, it involved, as John said, it involved all stakeholders. Our admin staff were part of it. Our school counseling and our work-based learning facilitator was a part of it. Our students and our teachers. So strategically, I selected teachers some that were veteran teachers, some of my newer teachers, and then kind of 5 to 7 year teachers, some department chairs, some not department chairs. So we had I just wanted some different views at the table. Our teachers absolutely loved the conversation. The one feedback that I received from the teachers, they wish they had more time to explain. That was the biggest piece of feedback. Besides that, they absolutely loved the visit. They loved the observation piece, but they really felt heard. From our student component, I sat in just for liability purposes. I sat in and was kind of a fly on the wall with our students. Our students did a great job, and again, a lot of them came up and thanked me afterwards for allowing them to and offering them the opportunity. But again, it's always, I think it's really important to hear from the student lens, as they are our customers, right? And that's who we serve every day, and we have to hear from our students and actually take that input into account and see how realistic it is to put some of their suggestions into practice. And then also our school counselors and our work-based learning coordinator. I really feel like the blueprint and this process is very thought out from a school leader. That's not something I always feel, to be very honest. I feel like Maryland has done its homework and continues to do its homework. I'm really impressed with this process overall. And I just really felt part of the process, and so did my staff. So I think that's really important stuff, especially as we build the trust amongst people, as when changes have to happen to meet the 45%. Not everybody obviously is going to get their way, if you will, but at least they had the opportunity to speak to the data and why we were doing what we were doing. So again, I really, the most impactful part of the day was the breakout sessions. I think from the review committees, I think it's always important to see what CTE classrooms look like. So if you've never visited an Academy of Health class or a carpentry class or a welding class or an automotive class, it looks different. And as the principal of a CTE center, our classrooms do look different than a business or a web page classroom, and that's some of the areas I used to teach. I used to teach marketing, web page design, entrepreneurship, and our classes look different. So I think it's really important for the review team to have that lens and understand that. Lastly, I'll just go. I'm really just proud of the work that Anne Arundel County Public Schools has done over the last couple years to really focus on CTE and really leverage CTE. At Cat North and at Cat South, our two standalone centers, we have really focused on the career coaching model before career coaching was a thing. So we focus on individual student goals and make sure that each and every one of our students has a plan before they graduate school. And our school counselors work with each student individually to ensure that they have a plan going into college, career, whatever, apprenticeship, whatever that student's goal is. We make sure that we equip the student with the tools to get there. And then just a couple things that I would just to end on. I love the fact that the organization of the visit, and for some of our students that might suffer from a little anxiety, sending out the questions in advance and just allows them to really think about the questions and to give you a deeper level of understanding. I think that was really important. Just moving forward, some think abouts. The importance of aligning the IRCEs with the completer pathways. Currently, there are a couple approved IRCEs, and I'll use nail technician as an example, that does not have a completer pathway. I would love to offer a nail technician course. I think there would be a strong demand for that. But as of right now, that is not an approved completer. The importance of utilizing local employment data. I did a lot of chicken farming down in Somerset County when I was growing up. My uncle owned 7 chicken houses, so I would go down there. But their needs for their employment and their completer pathways are dramatically different than Anne Arundel County's. And they might match in some areas. But I think it's really important to, as we are going through this process, to look at each individual county as an individual county. Again, Garrett County, it's an extreme example, but we do have different employment needs. And lastly, just allowing and hearing each other's best practices from LEA to LEA, something that we have not done a good job of in Maryland, at least from the building perspective. I don't know if the CTE directors have done that, but as building level principals, that is not something that has been shared in the past, which I would love to learn from Rob's of the world and Dr. Boyd's of the world. I would love to learn from other CTE experts around the state, and I think that's something that we could do a better job of moving forward.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Trinetta, you're up.
Awesome. Thank you, John. And I would definitely say I have to echo many of the comments that were previously made. So at the CTE visit, I visited the Anne Arundel County School. I was only able to make it to one school, which was Cat North, but it was really nice when I got there. At that particular facility, I served as a facilitator along with Rachel Parker for the counselors meeting. And it was really, really great kind of hearing from a counselor's perspective, as well as some of the LEA's perspectives on what are some of the barriers that they're seeing in their particular area, and what are things that they are really looking for that they feel will help them achieve the 45% goal. I think what was great about the meeting is that it wasn't negative. It was about, okay, these are barriers, but these are things that we can address to reduce those barriers and actually achieve the goals, and not just this can't happen. They had really great examples of activities that they were already doing and things that they'd like to expand on. They admittedly said they needed to do a bit more work from a counseling perspective from middle school to high school, but they had specific days where they were bringing middle school students over to gain exposure at CAT. It was also really interesting when we got a chance to sit down with the administrators and the principal and everyone else and everyone from the meeting, because we really got to hear about, and even from Cat South, the principal from Cat South came over, and it was really good to hear how they were thinking about integrating CTE programming even outside of the CTE schools themselves. So how do we integrate CTE programming? Because we don't have enough space in the schools for the equipment, for the people, for the children, enough teachers. So how do we integrate some of these experiences into the traditional high school so that we can get to that 45% goal? So I really just thought it was a great brainstorming and learning session. I think what I've learned primarily from this was that as an employer specifically, we run into barriers with hiring young people at times because legislation for a particular area might say one thing, but we also have like CTE programs and students being trained for another. And I heard that somewhat echoed from the teachers, everything from like how apprenticeship runs based off of one perspective, based off of the industry perspective, and then based off of how we have legislation. And so I realized that we have very similar barriers, and there was an opportunity for us as business leaders to work a little closer in that space where we can help to support and advocate for those things that the schools need, as well as the same things that we need to ensure that we're building a strong talent pipeline. I do think that the visits work. I would love to go on more, and unfortunately I only had a half a day that day, but I would recommend for any CTE member, any business leader, any committee members, any governor's workforce board members, maybe even inviting individuals. And we did have some individuals from the local workforce board, but even including them at all the visits is just like a great opportunity for everyone to kind of be in the space at the same time and kind of walk away with, I think, viable discussions that help us to kind of move forward. So I really think it worked, and I'd love to see an increase of employers and business leaders, whether they're a part of any of these committees or not, but if they have businesses in the market that are employing individuals, to invite those individuals in and participate. That would be great, because I think more knowledge from a business perspective will help you build more advocacy in the end. And generally, I just enjoyed it, and I will volunteer to do it again and participate at any capacity that I can, just because I want to continue to learn and want to continue to see what's going on around the state. So those are my comments, but I invite anyone to have, if they have any questions, feel free to, put them in the chat or come off mute if any of my committee members have questions about my experience.
Thank you, Sharnetta.
Thank you.
And then Adam, if you want to pop in there for a couple minutes and finish that out for us. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Again, I think a lot of the my feelings and sentiments have already been expressed. But when John contacted me about wanting to do the visit, I immediately volunteered. We are I've been in this role now going into my 8th year. We are very proud of the work that we've done here in Queen Anne's County, in all of CTE. In our trades, our teachers are proud of what they do, and I think that was kind of highlighted through the visit. We have a very veteran staff. Just for example, I'm hiring my first teacher in the trades in 7 years here, so all my trades teachers have stayed, and I know that's not typical, and I'm very, very thankful for that. But with that being said, having a veteran staff, they've been through some of the not this visit specifically, but they have been through visits before and have not received and not felt the same way that they felt about this visit. When this visit was over, they felt that it was meaningful. Our counselors were a part of this. Our career coaches that are new to this were part of it as well. So they were excited. We like I said, we are proud of the programs we have, but I also know that just as everybody out there, we have work to do, and we want to get that feedback, and we want to partner with the CT committee and the state to see where there are areas where we can partner and provide things like professional development for our school counselors, professional development for our teachers, where we can do a statewide approach where everybody's hearing the same thing. So that's one of the things that we were really excited about for this visit, and I hope that we can sort of capitalize moving forward. We did say, I mentioned this when we had our debrief, just about kind of consolidating the data gathering from this visit with our CLNA, because when I went through, this visit came before I did my CLNA for the Perkins grant, but I identified the same things. And like I just mentioned, we need some professional development for our school counselors. We need to see why students are not persisting all the way through their program. So there was definitely, you can see that overlap between the two. So that was really good. It was a little bit of coordination between, we don't have a CT center, but I reached out to my principals and our academic deans at the high schools, and they did a phenomenal job of organizing, getting the student focus groups and getting the teacher focus groups. And so we were really, really happy about that. And just overall, the process was great. And like I said, I'm always open for feedback and what we can do to make the programs better and move our students forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Adam. We appreciate you guys chiming in. It's always good to hear the voices of the people that are there. So I appreciate you and Joe and Sharnetta for sharing that. I had a good time too, if that means anything. So, all right, Jackie's up. Jackie, I'm going to let you go from here.
Okay, thanks so much for having me be a part of this today. And it was so nice to hear those perspectives on the visits, because I was on both visits too and really found them to be really engaging conversations. And the school folks who we talked to really wanted to tell us a lot about the good things that were going on at their school, but were really engaged in serious and productive conversations about barriers and how to work around them and what their planning and thinking was. So I thought they were really good conversations. I'll go quickly here so that we have time to chat a bit, and John sort of covered some of this, but I was just going to quickly go over sort of the shape of the deployment plan, which I know most of you have seen. But in the deployment plan itself, we tried to lay out a bit of what the overall strategy over the 7 years that we have in the timeline for this, but more detail about what we're going to be doing in the next year or two, basing it on what the pilot experience and the budget that we have going forward for the next year. But another piece of it that we really are assuming is that this is sort of an iterative process, and that the process is going to change and the questions are going to change to align with the stage of system development and system building that's going on in the state. So we've thought about it. John, you can maybe switch to the next slide. Tried to sort of think of the work over the 7 years in some different phases. And as John mentioned earlier, thinking of the first year or two as really sort of a phase where we have a touch point with every district in the state, and we gather baseline information, really helping us try to understand what's going on across the state, sort of provide a snapshot of that at an LEA level, but within LEAs, try to look at a sort of a representative set of schools so that we can get a sense of what's going on, and to begin to collect the kind of data that we'll need to collect to be able to think about having a data bench line to work from in our next phases of work, of seeing what the progress is and seeing how LEA's systems are aligning with the emerging guidance and frameworks that the CTE committee is going to be developing. And sort of in that next phase, also sort of looking for that alignment and monitoring progress as we go along. As John explained, that sort of organizing us around an LEA framework will allow us to do repeat visits to LEAs and begin to think a bit about sort of progress across the LEAs, rather than organizing this as sort of going down a list of 250 schools that we visit one by one. That's okay. And then in phase 3, really starting to look at the long-term outcomes once we see the system that we're trying to put in place being built over time. And the goals of phase 1, which would be starting next year, again, is to sort of get the snapshot, a representative set of schools in each LEA, and begin to collect the kind of data that we're going to need to characterize that baseline. As John mentioned before, thinking about what a definition of sufficient or insufficient progress towards successful completion of a CTE pathway is, sort of how to identify the schools and the LEAs that really need help. And also to continue, as John said, to identify best practices so that the CTE committee can also use this as a way to help share best practices and supporting districts in those ways. And then for next year, our target is to visit 13 LEAs over the school year, and a mix of small and larger LEAs. And as John said, we're going to try to visit at least 2 schools in each LEA. Maybe we've talked about maybe some of the bigger LEAs possibly visiting 3 if that seems like it makes more sense. And working closely with the CTE lead person in each district to figure out what is the right first set of schools to take a look at that would give us a sense of what's going on across the district. And then in terms of team members, we have sort of a set of priority members that you're all familiar with as they're in the legislation, of committee staff and CTE teacher, school leader, employer, trade union representative, and employment apprenticeship sponsor. And then also, to the degree possible, to add other members to give us broader perspectives on the visits as possible. And Sharnetta joined the Anne Arundel visit, but it was really helpful and really useful, I think, to have CTE committee members or their designees join the visits. Adam joined us, I think, on the visit in Anne Arundel, if I'm remembering that correctly. No, you didn't. So we had a CTE director from another county join us there. But having someone with sort of a peer perspective to join is both a learning experience for the CTE directors and sort of helps bring that perspective into into the team expertise. And then workforce board development reps, which we did have at one of our visits, and bringing in the community college representation when possible. SDE folks joined us for at least one of the visits, if not 2. And then having a representative from AIB. So sort of figuring out how to round out those teams beyond the set of priority members. And then the program components for the year, similar to the pilot year structure where we have a faith orientation where we collect data and background information about the district and the schools that we're going to be visiting. The visit structure, which is laid out in the deployment plan. Really important for us, and we've scheduled, I think, a sort of on-site and then an after the site debrief with the team members, analyzing the data and the feedback that we have gotten, and then the reporting both to districts, schools, and then to the CTE committee, and then reporting not only on each individual visit, but across the visits, so that we begin to sort of characterize what some of the statewide issues are. And then, over the year, and John mentioned most of these already, we made refinements over time in the pilot visits. And as Myra said, this is sort of an iterative process where we're going to keep refining it as we go, adjusted the time distributions. Nobody thought we had enough time for almost any meetings, so any focus group. So we'll sort of have to figure out how to balance that out. But reducing classroom visits didn't mean that we deprioritized that, but we thought about how to give ourselves some flexibility in terms of different things were going on in different classrooms, and we were able to engage with teachers and students in some classrooms, and in other classrooms we didn't want to interrupt what was going on. So we sort of played a little bit around with how to organize that, but still give the team members a good sense of what classrooms look like and being able to sort of engage with folks when we could. We had to, think about how to introduce this work and how to sort of engage different types of audiences in the conversations. We've had to pare down our interview questions quite a bit, and make sure we focused on the key issues for each group. We're still refining the list of key data to collect and sorting out what is available at a school level, at the district level, and sort of how that aligns with the state data that we have. One of the things that was sort of interesting, we realized when we visit some of the larger LEAs, visiting the two schools is a smaller scope of what's going on in the LEA. So we've sort of realized we need to spend a bit more time doing a broader overview of the full district, so that folks are going in with that kind of perspective. And then over time, it seemed like it was a really useful practice to invite the neighboring LEA CTE directors and teachers to join us. And then finally, as both Myra and John have said, this is a work in practice. We've gone on 2 visits, but there's going to be a lot more visits next year. And there's still a bunch of issues that we're, sorting out and think we'll sort out over time. And these are just sort of a sample of some of the issues about in the larger districts. Will we be able to maybe split the group and visit an additional school if that gives us a better
Sorry,
sense?
Jackie, I'm going to just jump in because I know some members have a hard stop at 3 p.m. and I do want to allow enough time for discussion. So
Sure.
I would say members, will always share the slides so you can kind of look through these questions and think about for the year to come. And for members of the public viewing, we will also post the slides so you can see this there.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's fine. And then John, back to you if you want to open up for questions or discussion.
Yes, I would love to. It is 2:51. So we are welcoming any feedback that you guys have right now, questions that you have. If I don't have the answer, Molly has said she would answer everything, so I don't have to say it, answer anything. But yes, we're very open to any questions now. If you want to reach out afterwards, you can do that too. But we'll take some time to talk about this before we move forward.
Hi, everyone. I had a quick question. Thank you so much for this overview. I was wondering, I just want to follow on Jackie's comment toward the end about needing to have focus, really focus in on what are the key data points y'all want to get and to have a good picture. And I was just wondering if your thinking about that had been informed by what any other states have done that have undertaken. I get no one has a blueprint quite like ours, but who've undertaken sort of a comprehensive review of their CTE systems. I was just wondering because that might be helpful to inform how you hone in on the key pieces of information you want.
Right. I think we did take a look at some of the SREB and some other national groups have put together sort of tools to use to look at your CTE system. We've looked at some of the state ones as well. And we were trying to narrow it down, at least for the pilot phase, to sort of the initial set of data that we want to collect to put together a baseline of where the state is on the things that are important, in particular for the blueprint of understanding where, the array of programs that are available, the, IRCs that are available, what the enrollment looks like, under and over enrollment, some of the really key issues in moving the agenda we have in place in Maryland. So we did look at that. I mean, there's a lot of other ways to look at your CTE programs in terms of the, quality of instruction going on in classrooms and things like that. Although this, this way of organizing this didn't really lend itself to that, with the idea of, sort of the limited visits, and sort of we thought of it as our first step is just getting a baseline of what's in place, with the idea that in the next phase, we may want to rethink and really focus in on some key issues and maybe look into what's going on in classrooms in a more focused way, and have that, have some of these other key issues as things we can investigate along the way. John, I don't know if you have other
That's
comments
great.
to add to
You
that.
said that perfectly. No, yes, that sounds great. Thank you, Jackie.
Anyone else have any thoughts or comments? Secretary Wu, any follow-up on that response? Did that make sense?
Well, I have a quick question. I see that phase 1 is for a span of 2 years. So after the ERT has been deployed and there have been focus groups and conversations with principals, and there needs to be a level of support, what is our plan to support that school? Will we wait till the end of the 2 years, or will we immediately provide them with a level of support at that time?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are we're going to go into schools and we're going to go into LEAs and we're going to see what's going on and get that baseline. And if there's something that is immediate, then sure. But for right now, I think that we need to spend that time figuring out what those real challenges are, and get an idea of maybe they're thematic challenges. You know what I mean? Like maybe they're challenges that we're seeing now. We've seen them in 3-4 districts that we've gone in. That seems like something that's immediate, but that's something that this is a more of a fluid type of program, because of things that might come up. We also don't want this to be the way it is too, to your point. Like it might right now, what we see it as is 2 years of going to every LEA, getting an idea of what's happening. However, if we stumble upon a situation that we see needs to be addressed now, then we need to go ahead and attack that, and do what we need to as far as the CT committee goes. And that's my answer to that. Molly, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think, certainly when there's a specific challenge, providing that assistance or recommendations immediately is obviously going to be beneficial. But to John's point, as we do these visits and we're seeing recurring themes and so forth, then as a team, a CTE committee team, we're going to need to figure out, is this a recommendation change that we need to make? Like, is this, and so forth. So I would think about, we have a annual report due December 1st of every year. And part of that is making recommendations to the AIB and legislators of any, changes in regulation or legislation or so forth. And also to uplift these recurring challenges. And so I would kind of see that as our opportunity to address recurring themes as well. So, and yeah, that's it.
Just one more quick comment. Every visit there will be a report, and the report will have some recommendations and some referrals to different kinds of resources and ideas. And there will be follow-up conversations, I think, after each visit to sort of debrief. But I also think that part of the idea of shifting somewhat to a district strategy is that we can also make recommendations to districts about the support we think their schools need as well. And are then in a position as well to sort of be, engaged with MSDE and with the state and with AIB to sort of be making recommendations about, other kinds of support, or as Molly said, policy changes that might help some of the schools and districts we're visiting, address some of the barriers. And then just the last thing is, I think the process itself, we are hoping will help bring, some of the sharing across districts that even the sort of district folks that were on today were talking about how important that is. And the idea of bringing folks on different visits and sort of engaging them and sort of seeing each other's best practices and being able to share that is probably a role that, the committee can start playing fairly quickly.
That's great. Thank you, Jackie. I'm mindful of time. Our work here today is just to walk through logistics. What we're putting forth is the proposed expert review team implementation plan that everyone received a week or more ago. And the idea is we will approve this. If we approve this here, it will then be sent to the AIB for feedback, and if there are any changes or iterations that we need to make, we'll if there's anything substantive, we'll bring that back to the committee for sure. But that's really the next step is we sign off on this here, and this moves to the AIB for consideration and any feedback that they might have. And if they sign off on it, then we'll move to actually implementing the implementation plan. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve the draft as presented to move this forward to the AIB.
A second, this is Sharnetta.
Thank you, Sharnetta. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So we will now send this on to the AIB and then let everyone know any feedback or adjustments that we receive from them. Just quick housekeeping with, I think, less than a minute left. Our next big task in front of us is to submit our second implementation plan that's due August 15th. So the CTE committee staff are hard at work on that now. And in kind of close coordination and communication with the AIB, we plan to have a draft of that around to the committee in July. So folks will be able to have an opportunity to provide feedback, et cetera. And then the committee staff will submit to the AIB for their review and feedback. Anything else, Molly or John, that I missed that we need to make sure people know?
No, I think that's it. The next meeting will be August 28th and hosted by MSDE. So thank you to Dr. Wright. I know she actually just had to hop off for hosting that next meeting, but we'll be there in 2 months.
Great. Thank you all for joining this special meeting, making the time for it. I know everybody's super busy, so we really appreciate it. Well done, committee members. We've moved another big piece of our work forward. John and Jackie, again, thank you very much. Really, really great job. Everything you've done this year and putting together this implementation plan. Really appreciate the time today. I hope everyone has a good rest of your summer. See you in late August.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Take care.